What's going on, gentlemen? Welcome back to the Danger Ranger podcast. This is episode 50. Just ripping it solo today. And we're going to talk about Milsim West. We're going to talk about future of Rockwell Designs. And I might tease at a project that I'm working on currently. And then kind of, goals and plans for the rest of the summer. So without further ado, Milsim West, Silk Road Strife was my first Milsim event. If you've followed me for a while, you probably know that I played Airsoft a little bit before I joined the Army. But this has been my first Airsoft event in about 12 years. Happened last month, at the beginning of May, out in Victorville, California, which you play at this Air Force base, this old Air Force base housing area that's basically just been completely demolished. The houses are still intact, but the insides are all disgusting. There's a bunch of, contaminants in the air and asbestos, and it's a little gross. But had a lot of fun, was with, if you watched the most recent episode, was with Blue Jean Operator and Sean. And we were running as Rust 4, obviously, and specifically an FSB style unit. So wearing black fatigues and multicam kit, which they call it the snake kit, which I think is just freaking sick. So first day, leading up to it, hit Vegas with my buddy Ben. Played a little bit of blackjack, didn't win anything, but had a good time in Vegas. Saw some cool artwork, walked the whole strip. So we walked about freaking 14 miles before we even got there to the event. So my feet were already freaking killing me by the time that we started the event. We get there around 2 in the afternoon the day of. Check in, freaking get set up in our little houses, do a little bit of cleanup to make it a little bit more livable. And that's when the rest of the Rushing Russians, the pod guys, rolled in and met a bunch of them. All y'all are pretty fucking sweet. And the first night, solid first night. We went out on a bunch of raids, freaking took down a bunch of dudes in their sleeping bag, got in some good gunfights. And we were out basically the entire night. Like we'd go back, rearm, refit at the little compound we had, and then we would go back out and freaking, we were just raiding businesses at the insurgency style events. So you can register as NATO, you can be Rust 4, or you can be a civilian and run a business. And those guys kind of get put in the middle between the NATO base and the Rust 4 base. So we were going out, the kind of the storyline was that Sean, Mystery Boys Inc. was the current president, and there's an election going on, and basically we were like, I was part of his like personal detail, whatever, along with Mystery OT, Volk, and then a few of the other Russian dudes, and then we had like the main contingent of the Rushing Russians. So first night was a success. It was kind of just like, all right, who's on the shit list? Let's go wake them up, or let's go kick their doors in. So got to have some of those fun sleeping bag kills that Nick and Sean are always talking about, getting people that don't have their guard up or have guards posted. And we were out till, like I said, like 5 a.m. just kicking in freaking doors. There wasn't really many doors to kick in, but notional doors, kicking in doors, raiding people, shooting people in their sleep. Good times, war crime style activities. The next day was the election. So we go for the initial election part, we're chilling out. And we end up kidnapping the opposing political candidate, taking him back to the FSB base. Initially, I thought we were doing it then, but then we were like, oh, we meant to do this, later. So we let him go. And then later on in the day, we had the actual election. During the day, we did a few just kind of presence patrols, even though it's not something FSB would typically do. We just walked through the town, seeing what's up. We got into a pretty good engagement we thought they were NATO at the time, but it turns out it was just a bunch of civilians that were wanting to get it on. So we got in a good gunfight there, came back, and then it was the election results. And the way that it was scripted, it was the other candidate won. So he won, and then at that point we kidnapped him again, got in another little gunfight while we were getting him out of there, and freaking had a blast. It was really fun. And then that night, so we were holding the candidate hostage, or prisoner, anticipating a large NATO counterattack, right, to come rescue him, because he was kind of their backed candidate. And so while we're waiting, Nick and Sean and I and Ben and my buddy Mr. OT. Mr. OT, I don't even know his handle. I think it's Mr. OT. We're like, screw this. Let's go check out what's happened in the town. Let's go see what's going on. Went to a couple of the bars because that's like half of the businesses are like these little bars. So we partied in one. There's one that was like called the Squat and Shot. So basically they had a little weight rack set up with maybe like 85, 90 pounds on the bar, this little curl bar. And the whole premise is you do a squat and then they feed you a shot like while you're squatting out of a bottle, which was pretty fun. Post the footage here. Yeah, so all in all, solid second night. While we're in the middle of this, one of the FSB guys finds us in town. He's like, hey, NATO's counterattacking. We're like, oh shit. Like, we're potentially cut off from the Russian area. And so we kind of, our little group of 5, I think the other FSB dude, I think he ditched us. He might have been with us, I don't remember exactly, but we're maneuvering on our way back to the freaking Russian area. And while we're in the process of maneuvering, a little bit drunk, and we end up getting in an engagement with like 20 or so NATO dudes who had taken over the Russian embassy and killed a bunch of them. We almost got wiped out there and, had to respawn back at the Russian base, but we ended up fighting them off, was able to buddy aid our way out of there. And then when we got back to Russian lines, the freaking NATO counterattack was already done. And it was like maybe midnight at this point. And so we were like, all right, well, I don't think they're going to be trying to come at us again. And so we ended up partying at a little speakeasy run by the Pink Ladies. And we had a good time, doing karaoke. There was Mayhem 07 Actual, who was a 375 dude who was running as a reporter for this one. Had a little Ranger rendezvous at the Pink Ladies, a little speakeasy there. And, it was a good night. We ended up going to sleep. We were anticipating a NATO counterattack at some point, and at like 2 a.m. in the morning, we woke up to blank fire going off, not directly by us, but like near us. And we all wake up in a panic and then go back out. And a few of us go out to kind of see what the situation is, to see if we need to wake up the rest of the body. It ends up being some other civilian business that had gotten hit by one of their rivals or something. And at this point, we decided that we were going to raid the Pink Ladies because we'd been kind of beefing with them over the weekend. We were keeping our Russian area nice and controlled, nice and safe. No shenanigans were really going on in our little area. Because we'd put a stop to it really quick. And Nick was like, yeah, screw these guys. Like they're not appreciative of us. We're gonna go raid them. And so that's what we did. We got up around 2:45 and went and raided them. Came back, after we shot them all in their sleeping bags, cleared through their little street block, went back to sleep, and then we woke up to one of them shooting us in our sleeping bags. We did have guards posted, but not on our little side of the building. Because we'd been up, most of the night, and we're like, probably should have had guards posted, but we didn't. Tina, I don't know, I can't remember her handle off the top of my head, but she had been beefing with us the whole weekend. Ended up coming in trying to shoot us in our sleeping bags, and then she got taken out by one of our other FSB guys who was on guard. And at that point, we're like, we're gonna go arrest her again. So we all get up and we go raid the Pink Ladies once again, pull them out of their sleeping bags, and then we had a mock execution in the street, which looks, a little questionable, but it was all for the game. And then at that point, we're like, all right, cool. Like we're gonna wait here and see what NATO does. And Ben ran a little AK class. And was showing guys, how to run an AK like a Spetsnaz dude. And at that point, it was about 45 minutes to an hour left of gameplay before, we called index. And NATO hadn't shown up to the Russian side yet. And then we got word that they were like pushing their way through the civilians. The civilians, for whatever reason, were all on the Rush Force side. So like they were putting up a pretty stiff resistance. But as soon as we heard that, we stopped the class and we freaking grabbed our shit and started maneuvering. Got into a pretty good little gunfight at the end, and that's when the index was called. So had a great time. Got to meet Josh Warren, who I'm hoping to get on the podcast here soon. I talked to him a little bit about it. Turns out he's a fan. So Josh, that's awesome. Glad you're glad you like the channel. Glad you like the podcast. I'm gonna text you here probably if you're watching this before I text you to get you on later this month. So for the dudes that don't know, Josh is the kind of the proprietor of Milsim West. He's the one that kind of puts it all on. Great dude. Former 275 guy, early GWAT, so he did a lot of the early campaigns, I guess, in Afghanistan. So like Winter Strike, which is a pretty well-known operation that happened in the mountains of Afghanistan. So when I do have him on, I do want to talk about that with him. Can I get an early GWAT perspective of from Rangers? And then obviously we're going to talk about Milsim West and kind of how he got it started and all that good stuff. Got to hang out with a lot of the cadre, so I got to meet a lot of the cool dudes, and in talks maybe I might end up being a cadre out there this coming. It's kind of like the end of the airsoft season right now, going into summer here, so potentially might be rolling back as cadre for future events. So got to talk to Josh and Nick and see what that's like and see if it would be feasible for me to do. So keep an eye out for that. Since then, been running Rockwell Designs, obviously. We did a pre-order, freaking got about a couple dozen rigs made and shipped out. And here's the deal, guys. Here's the deal with Rockwell Designs, right? Like, it's my baby. And I think I've probably talked about this before. It's the baby. However, it's a fucking bitch to just sit there and sew all day long, right? Like, I don't like necessarily sitting, and I definitely, I understand that it's trying to build out the business and whatnot, but the greatest ROI for me isn't sitting there and actually sewing the rigs myself, right? Like anyone that runs a business knows that as soon as you learn how to do something, you find someone else to do it for you kind of thing. So that's the kind of crossroads that I've come to is I don't want to sit and just run the sewing machine all day. So I've got a couple options. And there are options that I've looked into in the past in terms of finding another manufacturer to produce the rigs for me, which kind of cuts into the margins a pretty significant amount, which I don't really like. I like having high margins, even though it does take my time. The other issue is kind of scaling and growing, I guess. So we're about 4,000 followers on Instagram, which is awesome. However, all the dudes that have wanted a rig have pretty much been able to buy one. So I don't think the demand personally is there right now to warrant me doing an MOQ order of about 50 rigs, which is kind of the quotes that I was getting from places. The lowest I got was a 50 order minimum, and it was going to be about $100 a rig to manufacture, which, after you do shipping and all that stuff, you're making maybe $20 a rig. Quick maths off the top of my head, I think that's maybe $1,000 profit, which wouldn't be bad. That's not too crazy, but it's not bad either if I don't have to do any of the work myself. I just don't think there's enough demand to justify me going and doing a huge order for 50 or 100 units. We'd have to transition way more into making content marketing, which is the side of stuff that I really do kind of enjoy more. I've been working on a bunch of other projects with some other companies. Not really talk too much about it because we like to stay gray. That might be a good hint for the people that know. But we like this. We don't really like to talk too much about this stuff. If you follow me on Instagram, you might be able to figure it out. But whatever. So that is the kind of the crossroads I'm coming to with Rockwell Designs. Is one, the demand. Two, being able to do it or not trying to make them myself, right? Finding a manufacturer. And I want to keep them. Here's the other thing. I could easily go and find some Chinese or Taiwanese or, Chinese, like a Taiwan manufacturer, maybe even a Pakistani manufacturer. But at that point, I wouldn't trust the quality of the rigs, right? Like one of the founding principles of Rockwell Designs is that it's US made by a fucking American, veteran. with berry compliant materials, all, 100% sourced in the US, right? So I feel like I would be a bit of a sellout. Granted, it would make me more money, but the values that I try to build Rockwell Designs on, it would be counterintuitive, or it would send a different message, right? If I was to go to China and get these rigs made, which they would be cheap as fuck, I'm assuming. I'd probably spend maybe $20-$30 a rig, and hit my MOQs just fine and be able to make a good, little bit of, money there. But again, I don't really want to sell out like that. I feel like that is selling out to a degree. So that is the big issues there. So options going forward, because I do like the brand. I have built up a pretty solid following, and it is enjoyable. So options for me, I hire someone to do the sewing. Could be an option, but I don't want to bring a stranger into my home, because that's where my material and sewing machines are. And building out a full kind of manufacturing plant, ALA, Spiritus Systems. They started in the garage, right? So if you don't know their story, they're a couple of 10th Mountain vets. Most of you guys probably know who they are. And they started out in the garage, and they grew to where they are now, where they have a full in-house manufacturing, basically, facility for their tactical gear, for their plate carriers, all their stuff, right? So that does require a lot of capital. The other thing is the designs. Like, I've learned a lot in the process, but it's like I'm still not like super good at streamlining and making these designs like at absolute par with like Spiritus or Cry Precision, right? So there's just minor techniques, different materials, because my shit's pretty basic. Like, it's not even laser cut, right? Like, everyone's kind of moving to the laser cutting. Laser cutters aren't cheap. Like, around fucking like $50,000 or more for a decent sized one. So it's still all being cut by hand, right? There's a lot of machines that I could get. There's a really cool webbing cutter that I've been looking at. It's about $3,000. So the big thing is obviously cost to scale, right? Like, I would have to go into the red a significant amount before I'd be able to scale it, which at this point in time, I'm not really ready to do. I don't have a whole lot of business credit built up. So going into the red for kind of a maybe, it's a pretty solid maybe. It's not 100%. Like, I'm not fully confident that we'd be able to pull it off just yet. So options moving forward, we still do a little bit of the rigs here and there. I just kind of bite the bullet, every couple of months and put an order out or do a pre-order. Other option is we transition more into a kind of a clothing brand, right? So been following, these pages like Kill Crew. There's a few other on Twitter that I've been following, but kind of looking at seeing and building out more broad appeal, right? So like AK rigs, pretty niche, right? And we've done pretty good there, but I would like, goals, like, 20 years down the line would be to have outdoor apparel brand, more like Outdoor Research, Arc'teryx, something like that. Like, that would be kind of sick, because I do like the outdoors. I like the outdoor sports. And the way we could start that would be kind of starting out as like a merch brand, cool t-shirts, hoodies, pretty basic level stuff, and then build our way up into designing custom outdoor clothing, right? So that's kind of what I'm looking at. So we've got Rockwell Designs, which you'll probably start seeing. I'm wearing one right now. Victory Demands Preparedness. I just posted on the community page on YouTube as like an image posted on the Rockwell Designs page. So putting t-shirt designs out and kind of using that to build momentum and equity, I guess, in the brand, and then using that and leveraging it into an outdoor brand. So I haven't decided whether I want to continue or do that underneath the banner of Rockwell Designs, or if I want to start an entirely new brand and run it there. So I'm kind of doing both. So I've started a new project, and it's a little bit more in line with the kind of brand identity we're building on YouTube. Project Danger, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about what I've got planned for it, but it's called Project DNGR, abbreviated form of Danger. I'm going to drop the link either somewhere in this video, maybe right here, or it's going to be down in the description below. So go follow that Instagram. I'm going to start putting out freaking content over there, and it's going to have a little bit. The goal is to have more of a strong brand voice, brand identity versus Rockwell Designs. Rockwell Designs is pretty, what's the word for it? Like, it's already got its identity, right? And I'm just wanting to start a new project, right? Because I'm a creative type dude, and that's, I like to start things, and the hard part for me sometimes is sticking with it. So not giving up on Rockwell Designs entirely. It's just going to have to kind of get, not necessarily mothballed, but it's going to take a little bit of a side, going to be put on the sidelines for just a little bit. So that's what's new with me. Freaking thanks for tuning in. Keep an eye out for, I've got a quick lethality video that I'm going to be putting out. I'm going to probably film it right after I do this, and that's going to go live on Friday. And then look out for the podcast with Josh Warren, the owner of Milsim West. That's going to come later on this month. And then I want to do a Danger Ranger After Dark with Joe and potentially Shoemate if he's available. Those are always fun. So keep an eye out for those. And yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you later.